Will Deputy Counsel Luke Berg. Good morning, Luke. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. So, we were chatting briefly off air about Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and I did a quick search, as you did as well. I was curious about the population in Elkhorn, and yes, I guess the only thing that I know, I guess Elkhorn's claim to fame, not having grown up in Wisconsin, is Alpine Valley, which I think everybody is quite familiar with. But in Little Elkhorn, Wisconsin, population roughly 10,000, we need to be made aware of what's going on in their school district and how Will has gotten involved in, again, defending girls and female students in the school district. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, of course. So Elkhorn, to its credit, I think has a policy that bathrooms and locker rooms are limited by biological sex and has stuck to that policy. But there's a transgender student in the school district, a biological boy, who wants access to the female bathrooms and locker rooms. And so he has filed a lawsuit in federal court trying to get access to the bathrooms in the school district. The school district is defending its policy in court, but we are participating in the case on behalf of parents. We represent an association of 105 parents, actually, that all want to protect their girls and children and protect the privacy and safety when they're in bathrooms and facilities. So we filed a conditional motion to intervene and an amicus brief. An amicus brief is just a brief supporting one of the parties in the case. So we're supporting the school district and its policy to limit bathrooms based on biological sex.
So, what has the school district done, I guess, to accommodate this student? I mean, I would imagine that perhaps there's like a unisex bathroom in the school district?
Yeah, a lot actually. So the middle school is the school we're talking about, has I think 6 gender neutral bathrooms, multiple on each floor, and has given the student access to all those bathrooms. And so the student's never in a spot where they have to walk a long distance or go out of their way to go to the bathroom. It's close and easy, and I think that's a reasonable accommodation. Obviously, they need to go to the bathroom too, and should be accommodated and treated respectfully and kindly. But of course, that's not enough for some, and so we have this lawsuit.
So, when was it filed, and has there been any response yet?
Yeah, it was filed, I want to say March or April, and so it's just been in briefing since then. The court actually kind of gave the district some extra time to respond, and so their response was due in early June. We filed our response in early June as well, and so now we're just waiting to see what the judge will do. But one thing that's actually helpful, probably for listeners to know, is in our circuit, the Seventh Circuit. So the federal courts are divided into 12 circuits for the appeals courts. So in our circuit, there are actually 2 cases where the court has held that Title IX requires schools to allow transgender students to use whatever bathroom they associate with. I think those decisions were wrong, and pretty clearly wrong. In fact, Title IX explicitly says that schools can have bathrooms separated by sex, and yet the Seventh Circuit essentially said that, at least in 2 other cases, schools were not allowed to do what Title IX explicitly says they can do. But in both those cases, the court said, I think, either naively or disingenuously, that, there was no evidence that any other students or parents objected or had any problems with the transgender student using the bathrooms that they associated with. And, that obviously doesn't match facts of the reality on the ground, but that was what was before the court in those 2 cases. And so we're, in this case, trying to say to the court, look, if you're going to base your decision on that, you have to not blink reality and recognize that there are actually lots of students, lots of young girls who have significant concerns about going into a bathroom and finding a boy there. It shouldn't be a thing that has to be said, but apparently it does these days.
Yeah, so I mean, And think of the ways in which this so-called new rule can be taken advantage of, because I mean, isn't it, and I'm not suggesting that there are those that will go out of their way to, well, maybe I am suggesting that, but to test the limits. And I mean, teenagers are kind of, I don't know, sometimes impulsive. So, I mean, presumably with this rule, a biological male could, on one day, use the girls' bathroom, and on the next day, use the boys' bathroom. Correct?
Right, right. And yeah, I mean, safety concerns is the primary reason that we separate bathrooms and have for, uh, a very long time. Because, of course, if you have a policy that anyone who asserts a transgender identity can use whatever bathroom they want, you can't just limit that to one student. And so anybody then can use whatever bathroom they want, and you've essentially done away with separated bathrooms altogether. And of course, most transgender students are just going to use the bathroom like anyone else, but there are people in the world who are bad and will take advantage of that situation, and there's no way often to know in advance who they are. And if you're allowing the mixing of sex in the bathrooms, it just creates a recipe for a dangerous situation. So I understand why parents are concerned. I understand why young girls would be concerned. And I think the reasonable solution is to provide a gender-neutral alternative for anybody who is uncomfortable using the bathroom associated with their biological sex. I think that's a compassionate and reasonable way to deal with this. I wish that was enough, but for some, unfortunately, it's not.
So, with regard to this middle school, which you stated it has 6 gender-neutral restrooms, uh, did they have to add those restrooms, or were they already there, so that the solution was already in place prior to the lawsuit being filed by this transgender transgender student's family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the history of this building and when they added them or why they added them. But, the important point for purpose of the case is that this student has access to lots of options that are close to classes and, where the other bathrooms are located. And I would guess that most schools are thinking about this issue and thinking if they don't have gender neutral bathrooms, are looking to add them or will add them in the near future. And hopefully we'll land at a reasonable solution where, like I said, any student who feels uncomfortable can use gender neutral alternatives, but we can still have safe spaces and private spaces for the biological sex.
So finally, I believe, and I'm reading from your press release, is this Department of Education, this new final rule is set to go into effect on August 1st, and this is the Biden administration's Department of Education. So what kind of advice can you give and I guess this is precedent setting what happens in Elkhorn, but what kind of advice can you give school board members throughout the state that are also potentially facing this type of issue in their district?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, the existing Title IX rule explicitly allows schools to have sex-separated bathrooms, but we have this bad precedent in the Seventh Circuit. But the new rule from the Biden administration makes it very clear that schools have to allow transgender students to use whatever bathroom they want. I think that's wrong. I think that's poorly thought out. I think it's going to harm girls. But that is what the new rule says. But it's being litigated in multiple cases across the country. I think there's 7 or 8 of them already. A bunch of states and groups have sued over the new rule. I know at least one court has already issued an injunction against it. So school districts, I guess the advice would be to pay attention to the litigation, because whatever happens in that litigation is really going to dictate what schools have to do with respect to the bathroom issue. If the rule survives and becomes the law of the land, then schools are going to have to follow it. But if it's held invalid by the courts, then that will be a pretty safe confirmation that Title IX does not require schools to eliminate sex-separated bathrooms and allow students to use whatever bathroom they want, and schools will feel a lot safer limiting bathrooms by biological sex as they have long been. And I feel pretty optimistic about the chances of that litigation. So I'm hopeful that the rule will be enjoined by multiple courts and ultimately held invalid by the Supreme Court when it gets there.
So any idea, I know you can't predict the future or predict the actions of the court, but any idea when a decision will be made?
In our case, or the case against the Title IX rule?
All the above.
Yeah, so our case, I would guess some point this summer. So the way that the court scheduled the hearing, it seemed like it didn't see a need to decide immediately, given that school was about to end and summer was starting. So I would guess we'll get a decision in our case sometime during the summer before the new school year begins. In the Title IX litigation, that's on a very fast track in all the cases throughout the country. Obviously, it's a huge rule with nationwide impacts, affects a lot of people, and it's set to go into effect August 1st. So a lot of courts are sort of putting it on an expedited schedule, and there's a bunch of hearings this summer. I'm guessing we'll get a bunch of decisions this summer, and then it will go up on appeal, probably also on an expedited basis. So the next year is this summer, and into the fall is really the time to pay attention to the litigation if you're a school district.
Luke Berg, Will Deputy Counsel. Thanks for joining me this morning. You can go out to will-law.org to follow this case and sign up for their emails and press releases just like I do. Thanks for joining me this morning, Luke. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Have a great week. Going to a break. We'll be right back on the WSAU Wisconsin Morning News.
Meg Ellefson, the Wisconsin Morning News on WSAU.